Blog Talk Radio.
You're tuned into In5D Radio, the next dimension in radio, where we bring you the hottest, in-depth, spiritual, metaphysical, esoteric conversations and news. Get ready for spirit, body, and mind to expand in 3, 2, 1.
Greetings, and welcome to Quantum Healing with Candace. I'm your host, Candace Craw-Goldman. This program was created to assist humans in this rapidly changing world, and its foundation is based upon the late, great Dolores Cannon's work. So thank you, Dolores, for continuing to be here with us. And also thanks to Greg Prescott and Michelle Walling at in5d.com for making this show possible. With humanity's new understanding and acceptance of the quantum world and the role that consciousness plays in shaping both our individual and our collective reality, we have plenty of subject material. I am a full-time practitioner of Dolores' hypnosis method and had the honor and privilege of working with and alongside of that great lady for several years. You can find out more about my practice at newearthjourney.com. And before we get started tonight, for those of you looking for a practitioner of Dolores' method, you may find these wonderful people at Dolores Cannon, QHHT.com. And also, if you'd like to participate live on the show tonight, please call in. The U.S. number is 646-716-8890. That's 646-716-8890. And we'll try to answer as many calls as possible. So tonight is October 30th, 2015, and happy Halloween. I am so excited about tonight's show. I have a lovely woman and friend and fellow practitioner joining me today. Her name is Alba Weinman. Alba Weinman was born in Havana, Cuba, and she came to the United States shortly after Fidel Castro took control of the country in 1959. She grew up in Fort Lee, New Jersey, viewing the New York City skyline from her bedroom window, and after finishing high school, she moved to Miami, Florida, where she lives now. She's worked in the telecommunications field for 35 years and is always finding creative ways to use information and technology to improve her life and business. And the most unconventional technology she uses now is automatic writing, which I need to talk to her about, a practice in which her guides and spiritual teachers communicate with her via pen and paper. To put these teachings to good use, she founded Hopes and Achievements, Inc., and has been doing life coaching. And although this was very satisfying, she longed to reach into clients' souls and help them from there. And that's where QHHT, Quantum Healing Hypnosis, Dolores Cannon's method, came in. And it was the next logical step for Alba. Whenever Alba does anything, she puts her heart and soul into it. And this was the case when she began to build a haunted cemetery in front of her house each year for Halloween. She used her imagination, creativity, technology, and the law of attraction to create a bigger and better destination for neighborhood trick-or-treaters each year. And perhaps many of you are seeing some of those pictures scroll on the computer screen right now. Alba is fluent in English and Spanish and practices QHHT in Miami, Florida. She has a YouTube channel under her name where you can view some of her hypnosis sessions. And I want to extend a very warm welcome to my dear friend, Alba. Hi, Alba.
Hi, Candace.
There you are. That was a long intro.
I know.
I've got a little tickle in my throat. It's raining here in Kansas, and I think it stirred up some mold. So pardon me for that. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great.
That's really wonderful. Well, let's start with how you found Dolores. How did you learn about Dolores? How did you discover her? How did you get into this work?
It was a long journey, Candace. A really long journey. I think that maybe our generation isn't as quick to find out about this stuff, and it took many, many years to get to where I am right now. Should I start with the beginning?
Well, sure. That's where Dolores says is always the smart place to start.
That's right. Well, it all started with my spirituality and finding out about it, and it came in a very unconventional way. It all started with a makeup sponge. Believe it or not, I was one day. I was living with my mom at the time. I had just gotten divorced, and I used to use this makeup sponge. And one day the makeup sponge disappeared, and it was, okay. Things happen; they fall, but days later, the makeup sponge ends up right at the edge of my bed. And I had made that bed like every day. And all of a sudden, this makeup sponge is there. And I said, this is really weird. It's almost like somebody's trying to get my attention. And that's where the spirituality started. This is back in 1988. And I knew that somebody had placed that makeup sponge there, but I couldn't figure out how it happened. So I got interested in spirituality, and I discovered Shirley MacLaine. And at that time, she had written a book called Out on a Limb, which talked about spirituality, which was a new topic for me. We had talked about it when I was younger, but I really didn't get into it. And that then led me to the Ruth Montgomery books. And Ruth Montgomery was a woman who wrote many books via automatic writing. And that really, really interested me. I said, wow, if I knew how to do automatic writing, I could figure out where this makeup sponge came from. So, I could talk to the spirits and find out, what they're trying to tell me. And lo and behold, at that time, a friend of mine says to me, hey, I'm going to go to a meeting tonight. Would you like to come with me? And I went, sure. I had nothing else to do. And it was about transcendental meditation. And I was not a very spiritual person. I definitely wasn't into meditation. And I sat through the whole presentation rolling my eyes. This is not for me. I was a very corporate person at the time, very straight up corporate person, and meditation was not part of my life at the time. And I went to the meeting, and my friend said to me, let's sign up, and just learn how to do this. And I said, okay, just to please them. And when I got to the meeting, they taught us how to do the Om and relax. And instead of meditating, my head started going around in circles, which is really strange. And I felt like my whole soul was leaving me through my feet. And I thought that was really weird. So I looked around, I opened my eyes, and no one else seemed to have their head spinning. I was the only one that had these weird things happening. So I said, this is not for me, but let me go home. I'm going to try it maybe in the comfort of my own home. So when I got to my room, I put out a pad of paper on my lap and a pen, and I said, let me try the meditation technique that I just learned. And let me just hold my pen here. Maybe I could do the Ruth Montgomery thing. And I didn't think it was going to work, but as I was there, just meditating, just relaxing, my hand started moving. And it was going crazy. It was, it was all over the paper. And I was kind of scared. I was spooked. It was like, what's moving my hand? And I was afraid to open my eyes. And so finally I opened them, and it had all over the paper in Spanish. It said, yo soy tu padre, yo soy tu padre, yo soy tu padre, which means, sorry, I'm getting a little touched here. It said, I am your father.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm almost crying. So my dad had communicated with me at the time, and I went, wow, this is really great. So I ran into my mom's room. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and I woke her up, and I said, Dad communicated with me, and this is what I did. And she was very, And
how did she take that?
It was like normal. She took it like, okay, you learned a new thing. And in the morning, I explained to her, Mom, this is all I did. I relaxed. I put the pad down. I put the pen. I asked for some sort of communication. And Dad came through, and I went to work, right? So when I get home that afternoon, my mom says, guess what? I communicated with your dad today.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, that's no fair. I had to pay $300 for my session.
Oh, that's hilarious. Alba, how long had it been since your father had passed?
My dad had passed 9 years before. And that's when I found out. My dad was a prankster. And my dad loved to play tricks on people. And that's how I found out that it was my dad. I asked him. I said, was that you? And he goes, of course it was me, because he liked to play jokes on people. And so both my mom and I were communicating with him. Then my sister joined in, and she started also doing automatic writing. So all of us were communicating with him. And I found out, how he passed and what happened after he went to the other side. And it was a really beautiful experience. And, I got to know a lot about spirituality from my dad. But then after a while, we kind of ran out of things to talk about, because my dad told me that he had to go to school. He told me, I have to go to school. And I kept thinking, school? You don't have a body? What are you talking about, school? And he goes, I have classes that I have to go to. And I didn't know at that time that, you do go to classes. So he says, I'm going to let you talk to your guide now, and he'll answer all your questions. So I spent many years then communicating with my guides. And my guide was like my best friend. Anytime I had a question or I had any problem, I would start writing. And my guide told me, he kind of comforted me. He didn't tell me what to do. He just comforted me and would tell me things are going to be okay, And it was like having someone to just talk to that would answer my questions. But I found out a lot about spirituality through him. And so that's how I did the automatic writing. And throughout the years, it began to increase more and more to where I started getting guides that were master teachers that would really teach me things that I never even knew existed. And they always told me, we are preparing you. You're a messenger of hope, and we are preparing you for something really big. And I kept saying, well, why me? Why did you pick me? And they said, you agreed to this. And they said, one day you're going to be meeting with people face to face. You're going to be helping them, and we are preparing you. And it's been a long journey. It's been a really long journey. So, this has been going on for years and years. And so that's why I started the coaching business, where I said, I've been told that I need to, the lessons that I'm learning, I need to tell other people about it. So I started coaching people. And again, they were telling me, you're not going to be able to do this over the phone. You have to do it in person. You're going to be sitting across from someone and doing it. And we're talking about them telling me this back in 2007. And I had no idea that I would be getting into QHHT. And the reason I got into it was that even though coaching was really exciting and I enjoyed it, I felt that I was not being honest with my clients, because I didn't tell them where I was getting the information from. I just, sounded like a very wise person. But what was happening is during my coaching sessions, I was channeling. And I never really revealed my spiritual side to them. I was always the corporate person. You see, I was always corporate and didn't think that people would understand about my automatic writing or my spirituality. And so I kind of kept that hidden for many, many years until finally it had to come out, and it did. So that's kind of the long story.
That's how you ended up finding out about Dolores and QHHT? I mean, how did you actually get into one of her classes?
It's a long story. Are you ready for this?
Sure. Everybody likes stories about Dolores and how people found her and how they got into this work. It's why we're here.
It was really a strange way that I got through this. Back in 2009, we had a really strange thing happen to our family, and really strange. My son was arrested for something he didn't do, and that became international news. It was a really, really hard thing to go through. And during the arrest, well, he wasn't arrested in the house. He was arrested somewhere else. But during the search in my house, part of the evidence that they took were my automatic writings.
You're kidding.
And no.
Wow.
They took my automatic writing, and I had been keeping those a secret forever. And I didn't think people were ready for that information, so I kept them a secret. And during the search where they took everything that was important to us, they took my automatic writing, and I had to, for the first time in public, tell someone that I did this. I had to tell his attorney that, listen, now the public has this. This is, it's going to be used, against me because I wrote something in my journals about why he was arrested. The whole idea of why he was arrested. And it was going to come up, and I was afraid of that. And that was the first time I actually had to go public with the fact that I did automatic writing. And I kept begging, my attorney to please try to get these back because, first of all, they were not only my automatic writings, but they were my journals, my diary, my notes on anything that I did as far as coaching. It was everything that I ever wrote. They had, and it was really amazing. So that was a hard pill to swallow. And throughout the entire time,
that's really personal stuff. I mean, that's amazingly
it was very personal. So I was dealing with the fact that my son was arrested and vilified by the media for something he didn't do, and it was international news. And at the same time, I had this to deal with too, which was my own personal stuff. And months went by, and I begged my attorney to try to get them back, and they said no. Actually, they've been purchased by the local newspaper, and now not only do the attorneys have it, but our local newspaper reporter has it, and they're reading your journals.
Did you say purchased?
They had purchased it. Yes, they were public record. My all my stuff became public record, so they actually purchased it. Yeah, so here I was now dealing with this issue with my son and dealing with the fact that now my entire life was being read by every attorney, the state attorney's office, and our local newspaper reporter. And they were trying to look for stuff in there to use against my son. And I kept doing my automatic writing, and my guides kept telling me, don't worry about it. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. And I'm like,
of course it was.
What, are you nuts? I'm like a knife going through me. And they said, no, the people who are reading your automatic writing are supposed to be reading them. And I said, that's personal. You know, this stuff is personal. You wrote it to me. You didn't read it for everybody in the world to read. And, you know, it put me in the hospital twice. You know, I was under major stress. And my guides kept telling me, keep writing because we have a lot to tell you. And I kept saying, yeah, but I want my journals back. You know, those are private. Why are people reading this? And they kept saying, they're supposed to read it. They're supposed to read it. We are all one, and whatever you go through, everybody goes through. And that was really hard for me, you know, to realize that. So, you know, my guides kept telling me, you must forgive them. You must forgive them. That's the only way. And I kept saying, you know, it's impossible. How am I going to forgive? Because this is such a hard thing to forgive. I'm dealing with, you know, thousands of people, you know, saying that my son is guilty, and now at the same time I'm dealing with this. You know, how can I forgive anybody for doing this to us? And my guides kept saying, you must forgive. You must forgive them. So finally I was able to forgive them for not knowing any better, okay? When you forgive someone, you don't forgive the event, but you forgive the person so that you can stop hurting. And that was a major lesson for me, was that you can never change the event, but you can stop hurting inside by forgiving them. You know, they didn't know any better, and they kept telling me, put yourself in their shoes. They didn't know. They didn't know. So you must forgive. And, boy, it took me months and months and months until finally I did forgive them. And it felt like a big load was off of me. But I still had PTSD. You know, I was still suffering from PTSD because it was a major issue that had happened. And that's where I was. And so my son's case ended up falling apart. They realized that he didn't do what they said that he did. He was exonerated. He left for college, and I said, okay, now I have to start my life again. I have, you know, now I've forgiven them. This is behind me now. I got to do something to change my life. So I got into kickboxing. And I said,
okay,
what better way to get all of that anger that I still had that wasn't gone from the forgiveness? What better way was it to punch it out, you know, and kick it out? So I got into kickboxing. And every time I would go to kickboxing, I would just punch and punch and punch the bag and kick it. And I finally got all of the anger out. And I felt like I had healed myself. You know, it was an amazing thing that I went through. So I was doing the kickboxing, and all of a sudden, I got tendinitis. And I couldn't do my punching. I couldn't do my push-ups. I couldn't do anything in kickboxing because I had this severe tendinitis. And I kept saying to myself, I've got to get back to the gym because I really enjoy it. Well, when I said that, I hurt my knee, okay? And now I had tendinitis, and my knee was out of whack. And I kept saying, well, when I fix the tendinitis in the knee, I'm going to go back to the gym. And I tripped over my dog, sprained my wrist, and broke my toe.
Okay, Alba, I have to ask you, which side of your body? Did you do this all on one side of your body or both sides?
No, it was first started on the right and then it was the left. So yeah, I understand where you're going with this. So here I am icing all of this, and I said, you guys are going to kill me. What are you trying to tell me? You know, and I said, so I'm icing everything, and I pulled up my laptop, and I discovered Dolores.
You got smacked down into your chair so that you could do some surfing. I see.
Some serious surfing. And once I saw that, I went, oh my God, you guys almost killed me just to get my attention. And I could hear them laughing, you know? I could hear them laughing, right. And I said, this is what you wanted me to see. And I went, this is exactly what I was looking for. This not only deals with my automatic writing, because I've already been in touch with my guides. This helps with my coaching, because I'll be coaching people before I even, put them in trance. And everything that I ever was looking for was exactly what QHHT was going to give me. So if I wasn't even, I don't think I had even finished my ice bag yet. I had already ordered all of the books. I had ordered the books that were the prerequisites for the course, and I had ordered the course already. And during New Year's Eve, starting 2014, I was listening to my course online, listening to Dolores, and on another screen, I was putting together my website for QHHT. So as soon as I got I finished with the test, and I knew that I had passed my test, I launched my website.
Wow, Alba, it seems like I've known you for longer, and that you've been practicing for much longer than that. This, it's kind of amazing that I would not have guessed that. I would have thought that you'd been around a little longer than that.
It
you just
like
went right to
town. And the funny thing is I only do my QHHT on the weekends because I have a full-time job. But I pack so many sessions into a weekend. And I get so involved with them that I feel like I have been doing this for years and years and years.
Well, you're very prolific, and there's so many sessions that we want to talk about tonight. But why don't we start a little bit with your history of Halloween, because that's why you're here. You posted a session on the forum, and when I say the forum, Dolores Cannon's original support forum, we share session stories and tidbits and things that happen, the practitioners of her method, and she posted a story about a haunted house. And then when I was talking to her a little bit about it, she was telling me about how she'd always decorated for Halloween, and then that's when I said, well, this is perfect. You're going to have to come on and tell us about all of that and the things that you learned, and about this session, amongst others. So, but why don't you start with how you came to be that amazing person in the neighborhood who decorated up their house like that.
The Halloween queen.
Thrilled all the children, and you really made quite a production every year. How did you get started in that?
Well, when I was younger, I loved Halloween. It was great. I grew up in the 60s, and Halloween was going out trick-or-treating. And my mother was a seamstress, and she would sew my outfits. And we were very creative. I loved the creativity of Halloween. I love the fact that you can say, how the kids say, what are you going to be for Halloween? It's always, what are you going to be? It's creativity, right?
Yeah.
So when my son was born, I had heard in the neighborhood, there was, those whisperings in the neighborhood saying, there's a bunch of people that are trying to get rid of Halloween in this neighborhood. They would prefer that the kids go to the mall. And my son was tiny, and I went, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't make him miss out on Halloween. And he was tiny. He wasn't even 2 years old yet. And so I said, you know what? If you build it, they will come.
Exactly.
Right? So what I did is I had seen several years before someone who had put tombstones in their yard, and it attracted a lot of kids. So I went out and I got these big styrofoam boards and just cut them out into, little, put circles on the top to where the shape of a tombstone, and I made one with a cross, and I wrote funny epitaphs that I had seen at Disney World. And that was it. And, boy, the kids loved them. And we got a lot of trick-or-treaters that year. So the next year, I said, I'm going to make 3 more and grow the cemetery. And this time I'm going to put, maybe props in front of it. I'll put, a heart, and I put, a mask in front of it, and I'm just going to make it spookier, So then my family started getting involved, and we would dress up and go into our yard and pose as if we were monsters, but we wouldn't move. So we wanted the people to wonder if we were real or not. And when they had let down their guard, we would scare them. They'd say oh, I don't think she's real. No, I don't think she's real. And then we'd boo, and then they'd freak. And it became really exciting. We felt like we were empowered now. We can really scare people. So it became an obsession. Every year I did 3 more tombstones, more props, and my son grew up with Halloween being a production. It was a theatrical production. So I kept adding more and more, and then my husband would have skits in our garage. One year was a mad scientist, and we put strobe lights and body parts, and another year it was a cave and with a 2-way mirror inside, and people would go in and get scared with the mask on the other side. We started really getting into this production every year of calling in these kids, and they would bus them to our house. So when we moved to a bigger house, the reason at the house was because it had a great yard for a cemetery. And the realtor said, please don't tell that to the owners of the house because they're very religious and they would freak out.
Oh, my gosh.
So I started creating this really big production. We had a wraparound porch and a really huge yard, and what I would do is I would close off the porch. One side had curtains that were black, and the other side had curtains that were white, and we would do a mad scientist type of thing in one part of the porch, and people would walk through the porch and go through different scenes. We'd had strobe lights, we had really scary music, and at that time, we were hosting exchange students. And so the exchange students would participate as actors. And since there were other exchange students in the district, we would invite them to be the actors also. So they were learning about Halloween and were participating as actors. And we would get hundreds and hundreds of kids coming through our house every Halloween. We had fog machines. We had fog machines. We had real coffins. We had mannequins. I had a marionette ghost that is called a flying crank ghost, and we would put a black light on her, and it was just so amazing. That's what Halloween was like every year. And my husband's job was to put our sound system up in our second story. We would put these huge, huge speakers coming out of our windows in the second story, and we would run a soundtrack of thunder. And we would start it at 3 o'clock. We would start it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We would start the thunder soundtrack so that when the kids got off the bus, they would hear it. And
oh my gosh!
You could hear it like 4 blocks away. That was how loud it was because he had a great sound system. And then at 6 o'clock is when the official opening would start, and then the scary music would come on with the screams and chains, and it was just a production. And then at 10 o'clock, we took everything down.
Alba, how many years did you do this? And then tell us a little bit about why you stopped doing it.
Well, the reason I started, I guess in, what year that was? 1992 is when I started. My son was little. Mm-hmm. And I stopped in 2005. And the reason I did this Halloween was because it was such a great exercise in manifesting. That was what I loved most about it. I would sit in front of my yard in the dark, looking at my house, like maybe in September, and I would envision everything that would be put, every single prop, exactly where it would be. Mm-hmm. And I learned that not only did I manifest exactly what I wanted, but it was even better. So it became like an addiction, as to how I could do it even better and better and better. But what happened was that after a while, it became an obligation. People wanted more and more. And after a while, I was just tired of it. It was too many years of it, and nobody helped me. It was really tiring. I did it all by myself, right? I did it all by myself until the last day when my family would come in, but it was a lot of work. I had like an entire storage unit just of props and taking the coffins back and forth to storage. It was just a big ordeal. Mm-hmm. And the reason I stopped was that one year I overheard a little boy say, "This isn't scary. She had the same stuff last year." Right? Right. And I realized he was right. I was no longer doing it for me. I was doing it for them. And I had gotten lazy. And I didn't want to do it anymore. But my son had told me, "Oh, come on, Mom, this exchange student hasn't seen Halloween. Let's do this again." And I did it for them. I didn't do it for me. So it became an obligation. And when I heard that little boy say that, I said, "Oh, my God, you can never do anything, if your heart isn't into it. People know. Right. People know. You can't, I forgot what, I had said a quote, and I think you remember the quote that I had said. I had posted it, that you can't hide from yourself. When you know you're doing a job that's not good enough, you know it and other people know it. You can't hide it. And that's when I stopped. Mm-hmm. And the last year that I did the Halloween, we actually had 3,000 trick-or-treaters come by our house.
Wow.
Yeah. 3,000.
That's a lot of trick-or-treaters, and that's a lot of candy.
That's a lot of candy, and I know it was 3,000 because that's how many pieces of candy I bought, and I would fill up an entire Rubbermaid bin with it, and I would give one piece of candy to each trick-or-treater. And at the end of the night, I had to turn them away because there was no more. Mm-hmm. So it was, it was big. It was a big production. So I got burned out, basically.
Yeah. And how about let's share with the listeners a little bit of the conversation that we had when we were talking about Robert Monroe's concept of Whoosh and your production.
Yes. Yeah, that is really important to understand. I didn't know what was happening at the time. When I was doing the Halloween, I would get such a high from it. When I would hear the people scream, I would actually get high as if I was on drugs. It was so exciting for me, the screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And the atmosphere was so charged. There was such a charge in the atmosphere. And I could feel I felt totally different when we were doing this. The whole yard felt different, and there was a charge in it. And it, whenever you would hear someone scream, I would just get so excited. It was amazing because, first of all, we're doing a theatrical production, so you figure if you can scream out of someone, it's like getting an applause. You actually did your job. But then years later, I found out about this Whoosh, and I think you could describe it better what it is.
Yeah. So for those of our listeners who don't know about Robert Monroe or about Whoosh, he was the first person. I believe he coined the term. In his books. He wrote back, I believe in the 70s, Journeys Out of the Body and Beyond the Body, and I think Far Journeys. So this was a man, Robert Monroe. He has an institute now called the Monroe Institute, but he was kind of like the expert on out-of-body experiences, and he did all kinds of explorations in all manner of reality, dimensions, etc. And in one particular experience that he had, he was high above the planet, and he somehow was able to notice or watch things like wars or conflicts, etc. And he saw what some of these big, giant, fear-creating, mongering, fear-based things that humans would get involved in, how it would create this certain energy that would be released into the atmosphere. So he started paying attention to this. It was as if he was watching energy. And he would watch this energy go out, and he then realized that there were beings out there who were consuming it. They were absolutely eating it, living on it. And that term now is being used by any number of people who are, looking into how reality is created, and how, the controllers or the Illuminati or et cetera, how that is the thing that they're actually trying to create when they try to bring those kinds of things into our life.
Yeah, I would associate it, if you could do a visual, is like in Harry Potter, the Dementors that feed off of people's fears. You're actually feeding these energies with the fear. And once I discovered that, I realized that I was a co-conspirator. Yeah, I was actually feeding them on Halloween. I was feeding all of these dark beings that consumed it. And so obviously now I have a totally different idea of Halloween. I don't want to participate in causing any fear, but it was a learning experience, because I can tell you, firsthand how it felt to conspire to do this. And
Alba, the thing that the theatrical part of it is still amazing. And after we had the conversation, I started thinking about the grand Mexican and South American traditions of the Day of the Dead, and some of those things. Those are a little different. I think you can celebrate the thinning of the veils. You can celebrate the turning of the cycles, and et cetera, in a different way. But when if you worry too much or you create too much energy around, a dummy with an axe coming out of their head, that's something different, right? It's just different.
When I was doing this, I didn't think of it as anything except theater, because I have never been one to watch scary movies. In our family, we didn't watch scary movies. We didn't.
Right.
My son didn't grow up with any scary movies, no horror movies. I have never seen one of those Halloween Freddy Krueger movies. I have no idea about any of that. So people would come to these productions, and they would hear music like soundtrack from the movies, and they would get scared just hearing the soundtrack. And to me, it was funny because I could not associate anything of what they were feeling with my production because I didn't have any association to it. So, being that I was doing it just out of theater, it was mostly a cemetery. I didn't like to get into the gory stuff. I didn't get into the gory stuff until like the last couple of years. But I actually bought somebody else's Halloween haunted house props. I bought all of his props. And so he had a lot of body parts. So I said, well, since he has them, I might as well use them. But my entire time that I had been doing this, it had only been focused on the cemetery. And, I didn't think cemeteries were scary, but other people did. So that was what the Halloween thing was all about. To me, it was a production. That's how my son looked at it. It was a theater production that Mommy did every year, and it was fun for us, And it was a safe place for kids to go to.
I'm with you. I've always liked cemeteries. I know people, think about them as being scary or whatever. I always think of them as, stories. There are so many stories in every.
Right.
I would look at headstones and I would think about the stories. Well, and speaking of stories, you've got a great session story that in part contains some information and an experience about a real haunted house. Would you tell us about that session?
Yeah.
That QHHT session.
That was a QHHT session. A woman came to me not too long ago telling me that she was concerned because she thought her house was haunted. And I had never had that request in a QHHT session before. I said, well, but, let's find out. So when we get to the part of the higher self, I asked, is her house haunted? And they said, yeah, it is. So I asked to speak with the spirit of the house because that's what I do. I don't just limit it to the higher self. I talk to whoever happens to be there. And this was a man who used to own the house, and he had died. And I asked him what he was doing there, and he says, well, it's my house. And I said, well, yeah, but you're not there anymore, and, the lady of the house would like you to leave. And they said, well, no, it's my house. I'm not leaving. So I asked him how it was, that he had died, and he said, well, he had a heart attack. And I found out that I actually did kind of like a little regression on him, on his spirit, and found out that he had had an accident in the bathroom which kept him in a wheelchair. And one of the things that my client had told me is that she had heard a metallic noise coming from her daughter's room one day, which scared her. And when he told me that he was in a wheelchair, that's when I put two and two together. It's like, oh, so you're the one in the wheelchair. He goes, yes. I said, well, why is it that you don't scare the daughter if you're living in her room? And he says, well, I like her. I like the daughter. I said, but you don't like the lady of the house? She goes, no, because she wants me out of there. So what I had to do is a forgiveness exercise on him, which is I do role playing. It's not role playing, but I talk to him and to the client, and we come to an agreement that this man wants to now evolve. I talk him into going to the light because that's where his family is. That's where he's going to evolve. And I ask him if he would like her to forgive him for causing her all that anguish and being scared. And then I ask her, if she would forgive him for that. And once we come to an agreement that they've both forgiven each other, for what they've caused, then I ask my angels to escort him into the light. And so we got rid of the haunted house.
Alba, for those people who may not be really familiar about the mechanics of a session, so are you actually talking through your client to this spirit that is haunting the house?
Yeah. Just like we talk to the higher self, the same as when we ask for the higher self to come through, and the higher self will come through. I ask for whoever it is that is there to come through, because it's like a phone call away. Okay, you just call that person and you ask them for permission to talk to them, and the person will come through, and you tell them that you ask them their name, and you ask them any information that you want, and they'll give it to you.
So did
that was a real haunted
house problem. Did that solve her problem?
I haven't heard from her yet, but I would say it has.
And that session was really interesting in a couple other ways as well, wasn't it? I mean, it was a great session.
Yeah, they all they all get exciting. I guess the other thing that she had. This was the pirate, right? Is this the one we're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Another thing that she had is, see, in my sessions, for some reason, the higher self, as Dolores calls it, the subconscious, gives me little clues that it would like for me to dig even deeper. We've come to an agreement like that. And the woman was experiencing some pain, some sensation, and so I asked what it was, and it happened to be another soul that was occupying space. It was renting space in her body. So I asked to speak with this other soul, and it was a man, and I asked him, well, how is it that you died? And he says, I was drowned. I said, okay. Well, let me take you back. I did a little past life regression on the soul. Let me take you back and tell me what you did before you died. And he was a captain of a ship. And all of a sudden, he was carrying gold on the ship. So that put up a red flag to me. It's like, how many people carry gold in their ships? So so I took him to the last moment of his death, and they were shooting at him, and these were the angry people that he stole the gold from.
I see.
He was a pirate. And he had drowned in the water with his ship. So that was when I asked the soul again if what it was doing there, if it would like to evolve into the light, because it had not evolved. And again, I called my angels to accompany him after asking for forgiveness of causing harm to this woman. So yeah, we find really interesting things going on.
Well, what's so fascinating, I don't know if our listeners are aware of exactly how interesting this is that Alba is talking about. So in a QHHT session, the client lays down, they become very relaxed, and they go into an altered state, a hypnotic state, and they have experiences. Well, what Alba's just finished telling us is within this state, she was able then to talk to two other entities or spirits, and then also with them take them to their past to find out what was going on with them. So this is like a past life regression within a past life regression. Actually, two past life regressions within a past life regression, and it's quite astonishing. And I'm not so sure that I have ever even heard of Dolores Cannon herself attempting or finding herself doing something like this, and it's quite astonishing and very amazing.
Yeah, I had one recently which was very interesting. It was a woman whose past life was a prince. She was a prince, and the prince was not very happy. We found him eating in a very ornate room with the king and his sisters, princesses, and the queen, and he was not happy. The next scene, we find him in the countryside looking at the castle. The castle is burning, and he realizes, oh my God, everybody died. I am now the king, right?
Mhm.
So I move him forward, and now he is not a happy king because he didn't want to be a king. He was not king material, and he ends up dying. You know, he was a reluctant king, and he ends up dying in the hands of the soldiers because he was just very weak. So I actually
his own soldiers killed him. I remember reading
killed him.
Yeah, they didn't like him.
They didn't like him because he was a very, very good king. So I said, okay, let me find out what's going on here. Why is this happening? So I said, let me find out more about the king. So I called forward the king and asked to speak to the king, which he came forth. And I found out that the king had issues with the son. He really didn't like the son at all. That he preferred to have had somebody else control the kingdom. So I did a past life regression on him.
Another regression within a regression.
Right. So I did a past life regression on the king.
You're on a roll, Alba.
Right. And the king. So it ended up that the king had been married before, and he had a daughter, which he loved dearly, and he wanted the daughter to become queen, and the daughter refused. And he ended up marrying another woman who had this son, and then other girls. And the son was the next in line to be the king, but he had been so devastated by the fact that his daughter didn't become queen that he could care less about his other family, about the rest of the family. So we got a lot of information from the king about why he treated the son the way he did. So yeah, it gets really convoluted.
How did that story pertain to your client's life and their issues?
Well, I don't even remember actually. It was it's hard enough just to remember about all the past lives. It had something to do with her self-esteem or being, wanting to take more control. She didn't have enough control.
She didn't speak up. I remember that now.
She didn't speak up. Exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
She didn't speak up.
Yeah.
So it had to do with the king, and how he treated the son, and then it ended up being with her. So you're not just dealing with a past life regression of yourself. You're dealing with all the characters that are involved in your life and all the other lives. And Candace, that we're living all these lives right now.
Sure.
So
sure.
That's why it affects everybody. It affects everybody. Everybody's part of it. We're just doing time traveling. We're not doing past life regression. We're doing time traveling.
I just love that. I really, truly love that. Hey, one of the fun things that you and I get to do as practitioners is when we get together, we get to have our own session. And without revealing to our listeners what this session was about, there's an audio clip that I'd kind of like to play for everyone. It's just 1 minute long. But there's, and who facilitated this session for you, Alba?
This is Jerry Johnson. Jerry Johnson is out of Asheville, North Carolina. He's a practitioner there, and he facilitated my first session.
This is your very first QHHT session.
On myself. I had already been practicing for about 6 months.
Right.
And I had never had one on myself.
Right. So this is the very first one that you had on yourself. And Jerry is such a great guy. But let me go over to the studio here. And what I want to do now is just 1 minute clip. But this is a 1 minute clip that Alba sent to me, where she is just discovering in her own past life regression who and what she is. So let's take a minute. It's a 1 minute clip. You ready, Alba? Okay. Here we go. So this is Alba's own past life regression. And this is what, about a year ago then, or a little more than a year ago?
Yeah. Year and a half.
Okay, so here's the clip.
I mean, I'm really big. I'm huge. I'm really, 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 really big. I mean, huge. Huge. Oh, my God. I mean, I am humongous. Oh, my God. I'm like a giant. I'm like huge. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm huge.
Do you feel male or female?
I'm male. I'm definitely male. I'm a big male bull. You know, big. I'm huge.
Alba, that just cracks me up. Are you there?
I'm here.
Hello? Oh, okay.
I'm here.
I make sure I didn't lose you. That just
I'm
cracks
here.
me up. So for those of you who think a past life regression is always really quiet and sedate, Alba will let you know that sometimes they can be kind of boisterous and loud like that. And you just thought it was absolutely hysterical that you were really, really big. And what were you? What kind of life were you experiencing?
I was a Sasquatch. And I didn't even I thought they were a myth at that time. You know, I didn't know anything about the Sasquatch people. And I was thinking, why would I be seeing something that is a mythical creature? You know, because I didn't know anything about Sasquatch. And then all of a sudden see myself as one. And it really changed my life. That session made me go down another path, you know, to discover more and more about the Sasquatch. But it was a crazy session.
And you really felt being in the. I mean, you can tell by your reaction, your genuine reaction. It's as if you just plucked yourself, you know, and put you right into this other body where you're looking at these big hairy feet and this great big body, and it's just so much different than your normal, you know, body that you're used to. And so that's what caused the reaction here. And this reaction, it's really interesting because you get a lot of different reactions from people when you practice this method. And sometimes people are in awe, you know, they're in complete awe. And other times people are, you know, sometimes they're a little trepidatious, or other times they feel really, really strong, or they feel very, very free, or whatever it is. And for you were just great, big, and hairy, and you just found it so funny. And
well, I'm only 5'2", you know, so I wasn't used to seeing things from that height.
Right. Oh, gosh, yeah. And so do you think about that a lot, this session? I mean, are there times throughout the day? And why did your SC show you a life as a Sasquatch?
Well, it took me a long time to deal with that session. I think a lot of clients have the same problem in that, you know, you see something and you don't really want to deal with it. It's too shocking. It took me about 6 months to actually deal with it because I didn't understand why I was shown that life. It bothered me, and I was embarrassed of it because I said, you know, Sasquatch, come on, you know, out of anything else, why a Sasquatch? You know, come on. Started doing the video because that was my first YouTube video that I put up on my channel because I wanted people to know that, you know, I had one too, and mine was crazy. As I started watching the video over and over again, or listen to the session over and over again, it started to make sense to me. There was a lot hidden in there that pertained to me. It was personal to me. And it had to do a lot with the way I am, the way I think. And once I started researching the Sasquatch people, it made total sense to me as to what they were trying to tell me. So not only was it a message about myself, but it was also a message about the Sasquatch people, that, you know, I was connected to them. And I don't see it as a past life. I see it as a parallel life. This is a parallel life that I was having, okay? This is a Sasquatch that is out there right now, you know, or has been out there. I don't see it as something in the past. I saw it as modern day right now, things that are happening right now. All the people were dressed modern. We're dealing with a modern time Sasquatch, not in the past. So
I see.
Once I started researching it, I said, oh, you know, there's a lot for me to do, and the Sasquatch are a connection to me. You know, you know, I do have a connection with the Sasquatch people, and they are probably my guides also. You know, because that's what they do. You know, they're here to help the earth, and they are very wise, and they're very gentle, and you know, beautiful things about the Sasquatch. So I could see that I had to go down this path with the Sasquatch people. So yeah, you learn a lot about yourself,
don't you? I remember a session that a fellow practitioner gave me as well, and I got to meet an aspect of myself, and that aspect of myself was huge, and that aspect then spoke through me, and it was really interesting because there's a part, I probably could find this tape and play it at some point too. There's a part of this session where I am speaking as my aspect, talking about me, and I'm saying something completely different. I'm actually saying about me and my body, saying, oh my God, I knew she was there, but she's so little. She's just so little.
Wow.
So the
That's
exact
amazing,
opposite,
isn't it?
It was crazy, yeah, because this aspect and I communicate kind of on a gut level and an intuitive level a little bit, nothing very precise, more big picture kind of things. And this guy is a great big kind of warrior dude, you know, very very, very proud of his strength and burly you know, heft and all of that, and he had felt connected with me here and was we were and comparing notes about different things about personalities and people and or beings and relationships, etc. You know, how to deal with people, etc. And it was just interesting that he had a respect for me and I for him, but the part that surprised him was just, well, but she's so little.
That's amazing, huh?
Yeah, really amazing.
These sessions are so amazing. Every one of them is so different.
Yeah, they're really, really different. I'm looking here at a couple of my notes about some of your other sessions, and there's one that I wish you would tell our listeners about, the one where you were talking with the cells of the person who has the cornea transplant, and Alba, not to bring anyone down here, because as I recall this memory, it's not going to be sad. It's going to be kind of a joyous one. But my brother died in a motorcycle accident, and he donated his eyes.
Wow.
So he did exactly this. He set his eyes on, but I think the outcome may have been a little different, because I've been able to have some after-death communication with my brother, and all of that is fine and well. But your client had a different story. Would you tell our listeners about this story, this session?
Yeah, the client came in saying that he had a cornea transplant, and it had gone well, but he was still seeing a little fuzzy, so he wanted some healing. So when it came to the part where I asked the higher self to see what he could, what could be done, he said, no, we can't heal it because there's a lot of anger there. Okay. And I said, in the cells? And he goes, yeah. So I said, well, let me talk to the cells. Because you can talk to, everything has consciousness. You can talk to anything. Everything has consciousness.
It's just a telephone. If
just a telephone
nothing else.
That's why I'm in telecommunications. That's right.
Love it.
So I said, let me talk to the cells. So I asked the cells what was going on. What's the problem here? And it said, well, making it short, the recipient was very angry, and they can't heal because there was a lot of anger involved in this person. So I said, okay, all right, let me put you on the side. Let me talk to the spirit of the donor. Okay? So he came through. I asked him his name. I asked him for his age. And I asked him how was it that he died. And he was a 20-year-old man who had died in a motorcycle accident. And he was very angry when he died because, well, his life was cut short at such a young age. And another motorcycle rider had done something, and his wheel had malfunctioned, and it killed him. So he was angry at this other guy for killing him, for causing his death. So again, he couldn't evolve without forgiving this man for killing him. So I told him, listen, you did a beautiful thing donating your eyes. I know that that's what you wanted to do, but unfortunately, you've given him a gift that's not going to work. The cells cannot do anything unless you let go of this anger and you forgive this person that killed you. And it took a little, talking back and forth until finally he realized that, he had to do it in order to help this man who was the recipient. And again, we went through the forgiveness exercise. I asked my angels to escort him to the light. And, we got back to the cells, and the cells said that now that anger had been released, that they could now heal. So that was a really beautiful session in that, it did help this man. So, and he has gotten back to me, and he says that, he has his eyesight is improving, and it's working. So, I'm very, very pleased.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Have you had an? Go ahead.
No, what I was thinking about, what was the whole thing about that session that really had me thinking is, we do so many transplants. In hospitals, and so many people donate, their body and their organs and tissues, and there's no blessing, no ritual when you put this in somebody's body. And, you know, it's something that you really should think about, you know, when to bless them, to if somebody has received a gift from someone, to acknowledge it and thank that person for that gift.
You know, it's not quite the same thing, but anything and everything that we put into our bodies has a story and has an energy. So, for example, you know, if you are still a person who still eats animal protein, for example, if you eat animal protein that's come from, you know, a factory farm, let's say chicken, that's lived in a tiny, tiny cage, who had its beak cut off and has never seen sunlight in its life, you know, if you ingest the meat from that creature, you ingest that creature's story, and you adapt and take in that energy. And that's why we pray over our food. That's where grace and blessing, you know, came from. So it's, but when you do a transplant like that, it's even bigger, because you put that body, that living story, into your tissue. So have you done any other sessions with people who've had transplants?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've had, you know, surrogate sessions where you've had, you know, other people that we're dealing with, but not with transplants. I've talked to cells before. I mean, cells are kind of fun to talk to. I talked. Well, everything. You could talk to anything. Because everything has consciousness. You could actually zero in and say, you know, I want to talk. I had a woman who said, you know, she was overweight and she wanted to lose weight, and so I asked to speak with a fat cell.
Oh my gosh.
And you can't ever tell a cell to that you want to get rid of it, because it's like telling that you're going to kill it.
Right.
You know, you can never tell any part of your body to go away. It's not right. It's not logical. You know, they all have a you know, a piece of the puzzle. So you have to you kind of have to negotiate with this fat cell and explain, you know, maybe you would like to, you know, visit someone who's starving, you know, and do something for them, you know. But you could talk to any part of your body.
Of course. And I think, you know, you make a great point there about the cells. I think a lot about how we as a society talk about how we need to fight diseases or fight things like cancer, you know, the battle with cancer. Well, cancer doesn't need to be fought. Cancer needs to be understood. It's just another story. It's another story that's in somebody's thought. It's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Yeah, all cells want to be loved. You know, that's why the way you talk to your body is really important. And you know, we do that with a meditation that Dolores taught us. Is that, you know, you love your body. The way you talk to it is very important. And every cell is alive, and we are the gods and goddesses of our bodies. And the way we talk to our body is the way they react. So you talk bad about your body, it's going to feel depressed and sad, because you are its god and goddess. And so when you take good care of it, you give it good food, and you talk to it and tell it what you want, they'll be happy to take care of it, because, you know, that's what they're there for. They live for you. It's kind of cool talking to the cells.
It's cool talking to all kinds of things. I mean, you can be a molecule. You can have, you know, life as... I remember one of the strangest ones that I ever had was we discovered that this woman was a piece of gravity on the moon.
Oh, my gosh.
A piece. I mean, not, you know, like, not all of gravity.
Yeah.
A piece of it. I mean, it's a very strange thing. I mean, her experience, how odd is that she transported her consciousness to the moon, a tiny little patch a few square inches on the surface of the moon.
Yeah.
That was gravity there, the energy of gravity of a few square inches on the moon. Now, who would have ever thought that your consciousness could describe that and that we could have a discussion about what that was, what it was like, and why she was experiencing that? I mean, how crazy is that? That's off the charts.
That reminded me of a really strange session that I had that was very similar to that this man had a session where he was some sort of vapor. It was vapor. It was like oxygen or something. He didn't have a body, and he was actually living on some sort of like asteroid or some sort of a body of rock floating through space that actually had some sort of a humanoid powering it. And the whole place was very futuristic looking. It had a lot of pipes and very strange stuff. And it ended up, being like a future life in the future. So he was also just consciousness on there.
So, Alba, you said that this whole asteroid was being propelled by a human? Is that what you said?
Humanoid, yeah, like a humanoid.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was very strange. He described all these tubes that and the engine, how it propelled itself. It was a different type of engine that we know. But, yeah, it was a humanoid that was actually driving this thing. Very strange.
Driving an asteroid.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. Very, very interesting. Yeah.
It may not have been an asteroid. It was a rock. It was a rock formation that floated through space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get a lot of strange things that you hear about.
Well, I'm looking at my notes. You've done some really great surrogate sessions too. Would you tell our listeners a little bit about what a QHHT surrogate session even is, and then maybe tell us about a couple of interesting ones that you've had?
Mm-hmm. Well, my first one was really interesting. It was a woman who had schizophrenia, and we cannot do sessions with people with schizophrenia. So someone had called me and said, listen, there's this young woman who I know there's something else going on with this woman. Can you do a session on her? I said, no, absolutely not, but I can do a session on somebody else and have them connect with the higher self. So we had a session with him, with his past life and everything, and then later we connected with his higher self, and then I asked for permission to speak with her higher self. And what it ended up being was that this young woman, had been raped when she was a little girl, like 4 years old, okay? And they described what the person looked like, everything. The higher self told me exactly what had happened. And when she had been raped, it allowed another soul her body. And when that other soul entered her body, it was the soul of an Arabic rich woman who had lived many years ago. Okay, centuries ago. And this Arabic woman, when she was alive, had like dancing girls, who were in the palace. And she favored one dancing girl who happened to be this schizophrenic woman. So she never wanted to not have a body. So when this little girl was raped, it gave her the opportunity to take over and inhabit her body. She was a disembodied soul. And so this little girl grew up talking like she was a rich woman, ordering people around, talking in tongues, talking in a different language that no one understood. And that's when, we found out that it was the soul of this woman who they had known each other before. So in that session, the higher self actually gave 3 messages. It gave a message first to the schizophrenic girl's mother on how she should treat her daughter. It gave a message to the daughter, and it gave a message to the soul of the rich woman. And it told the rich woman to leave. And that it was time for her to go. And it was a jaw dropper. It was wild. So that was my first surrogate session.
It was your very first one.
Yeah. It was amazing to me. This is why this girl was talking in tongues.
Did you ask or come to discuss with the higher self how another soul comes in anyway? There are those who would say that can only happen with, permission, that on some level the higher self gave permission for that. Did you discuss that at all, or what are your thoughts on that?
I was kind of in shock because it was my first one, and I really had no idea what this was all. I didn't expect that. I just didn't expect it. So I would get into that conversation, but I think that it was giving me clues by telling me how she got there, because when you go through some sort of trauma like that, it lowers your vibration. And once you lower your vibration, you're a match to other lower vibrational forms, and I think it was giving me clues that that's what it was, that, that's when this little girl, kind of gave up and allowed this to happen, allowed somebody else who was stronger. When you think about it, this rich woman was a very strong person. So if the little girl was feeling disempowered, who else would help her? She was someone who maybe the little girl recognized it, recognized the soul from another life and allowed her to take over. It was her boss before.
So was there improvement then in this woman's life, the schizophrenic woman's life?
Yeah, the man did call me later and said that there had been great improvement. I don't keep track after that,
Sure.
I don't call them unless they call me.
Sure.
Most people don't like to be pestered after a session, but unless they want to tell you. But yeah, that was my very first surrogate, and it was the first one that I had seen another soul. And so I guess my higher self was kind of introducing me to something that I would be getting more involved with, later. But that was good. Another surrogate session that I had was with Sparky the dog.
Let's hear about Sparky.
Well, this is a session that I actually have on YouTube. It's towards the end. It's called A Universal Message, and this was an amazing QHHT session. And before we started, we had been discussing my dog, because my dog is very old, and she said, "Oh yeah, I have a dog too." And I said, you can talk to your dog. We could do a surrogate session on your dog. And she said, "Yeah, really?" I said, "Yeah." So towards the end, I asked to speak to Sparky, and if you see the YouTube video, you could see that she totally changes. I felt as if she was wagging her tail when I was talking to her. And I just was interviewing Sparky, and Sparky, told me that he was very happy that they had rescued him, because he didn't want to. I guess he didn't want to die at such a young age. He was at the shelter, and I asked him what he liked, and he liked biscuits, and it was just really fun to speak with a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And the client was really happy too, because she actually felt what Sparky felt like to speak, as Sparky.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was some sort of message.
It was just a nice message that it was very, very happy that they had rescued him. The dog was very grateful for the love. It loved to be hugged, and it was just a very thank you. It was the dog wanted to just say thank you for being my family. So it was very nice. That was really nice.
Oh.
And another surrogate session that I had, which I didn't even expect it to be a surrogate session, was another one that I have on YouTube. That was my cousin wanted to find out more for our family tree, and she wanted to get some information about our ancestors. And the higher self said, "Well, go to the pier," And I figured it was talking about maybe some sort of a registry that was there. Right? I mean, the higher self says, "Go to the pier." And I went, "Oh, okay." And then all of a sudden, my cousin is living the life of my grandmother. She actually did a surrogate for my grandmother. So talk about convoluted. She found herself on the ship going from Spain to Cuba. I had the higher self look for her, and they found her on the ship, very nauseated, making the long trip across. And then my cousin went through the excitement of meeting her husband in Cuba, and how she felt being in love, and how she felt in a new country, and then her husband dying, and then her death scene, and then after she passed, what she was seeing and experiencing after she passed. So that was convoluted too, and that was kind of like a impromptu surrogate session.
That's really interesting, and and so it makes me wonder so many questions. Like, were you close with your grandmother? Did you know about her? Did your cousin? Did you all? I mean, was there some mystery that was solved, or what?
My grandmother died when I was 6. And my cousin was 2 when she died. So she really didn't know my grandmother. She knew her up until she was 2 years old. So she didn't really have too much interaction with my grandmother. And we did, what I think that we got out of that session was just a visit from my grandmother. It was
right.
We didn't really learn anything new except her feelings. I learned where my mother got some of her fears from, which then she passed on to me. So when I heard my grandmother talking, I went, "Oh my God, that's where it came from." So you know how kind of like the DNA kind of, you learn things from your grandparents. I was listening to my grandmother, and I was saying, "Oh my God, that's what I learned from. This is where it came from." And my cousin, of course, is the opposite, so she didn't really get any of that from my grandmother. But it was just nice being able to visit with my grandmother. It was just really nice.
And how surprising for your cousin, who was just 2 when she died. So, Alba, did you all do that in English or in Spanish?
Well, it was both. It was both. We kind of flip-flop every once in a while. Sometimes it would be in Spanish, and sometimes it would be in English. In the video, I actually put the subtitles in whenever it was in Spanish. I've had clients before that flip-flop, and for me, it's like breathing. So, it doesn't matter what language they're talking in. I'll just jump in to whichever one they want to talk in. But with my cousin, every time an ancestor would come through, they would start speaking in Spanish. And I've done the same thing. When I've had QHHT sessions and the practitioner has asked to speak with my father, for example, has come through and he'll speak in Spanish. He'll start talking in Spanish. But yeah, it was a really nice visit with her. Since we didn't spend any time with her growing up, it was just nice to have a nice visit and get to know her life a little bit more. So it was unusual.
Yeah. So you do sessions in English and in Spanish, and do they differ at all, the two languages or the two cultures? How are they different? How are they the same if you're not mixing them up like you are with your cousin?
Well, the first session that I had in Spanish was my hardest one because the SC wouldn't come through, the subconscious wouldn't come through, and I kept begging, please, just throw me a bone here, just let me hear you in Spanish. And the SCs, it sounds exactly the same to me. They have the same tonality, they have the same way of talking. It's amazing when you hear them. That it's exactly the same. And you know what I'm talking about. You just know. As a practitioner, you just know when it's the higher self. And in Spanish, it's exactly the same. The only thing that it differs in my sessions is that the Hispanic community is more open to other realms. They grew up with more spirituality, more things that are no-brainers for them. They'll come to me and they'll say, listen, I'm a real devout follower of this ascended master, and this is who I want to talk to. And okay, and or I know that I have to forgive for things that I did, and these people are just more in tune with their spirituality. They grew up with it. There's a lot more religions that are based on other things than what we know are just basic, religions. So, yeah, I have people who are a lot more open to what's just happened to them. They expect it. They almost expect weird stuff to happen. So they're very open.
Right. Yeah, actually, Alba, we've got a lady in the chat room named Alicia who she wants to know why she has the feeling that she's meant to do magic for real. And I have a thought about that. What do you think of that question? Why would somebody feel like they are meant to do magic for real? Does that bring up anything for you?
We always do magic. We're all doing magic. All of us. We just don't know that we can. We do magic every day, but we don't pay attention.
I think
so. It depends on what magic she's talking about, but we create our own reality.
I think actually I have a thought about that, and my thought is this: there's the idea of stage magicians, and even as a child, I didn't like them for some reason. The basic, the guy with the coins or the hat or the rabbit, or I never liked them, and I didn't know why, because all of my friends were very excited when it would be a magic show, and there was something about it that just bothered me, and I didn't know what that was until starting to do this work. And it occurred to me that the reason that I don't like stage magicians is because think about what it is that a stage magician is doing with their audience. They are standing up on stage and the audience is sitting before him or her, and he is saying, okay, I'm going to be doing some things up here that's pretend magic, and you're going to pretend to believe it. But we all know there's no such a thing as magic. And it took me a really long time to figure out the fact that I knew that magic was real, and it pissed me off to watch a stage magician stand up there and kind of commandeer everyone's attention and make it sound like magic wasn't real, because I knew magic was really real. And so to me, a stage magician just helps the farce of us being powerless and weak and not able to tap into real magic, perpetuates that idea. So that's my take on magic. What do you think of that, Alicia? Well, Alba, we're coming down towards the end of our time together. Is there any more sessions you'd like to tell us about before we say good night for the evening?
Boy, I think I've said so many already.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel and maybe how people can watch some of those sessions there and some of the other things that you offer, and we'll just call it a night then.
Yeah, the YouTube channel can just be reached by just typing in my name, Alba Weinman. That's the channel name, and on there I have QHHT sessions. I don't have the whole session. I don't like to put entire sessions because this, people have private information that I don't like to divulge, but you'll see partials, and I also have other types of sessions which are not QHHT sessions. They're more hypnotherapy, because I do have almost 400 hours of hypnotherapy training, so I do other types of hypnotherapy also, which is not QHHT, and those I call the spiritual journey of forgiveness. And I also show some of those. Those are for different cases where we do different things. But I love the QHHT sessions. They're amazing. And for anybody who's thinking of getting one, I know, Candace, that you agree with me. I would have people contact a practitioner near them and see who resonates best with them. There is no competition in practitioners. Everybody is attracted to the practitioner that will be the best for them. And that's how I feel with my clients, that the ones who will come to me are the ones who are meant to come to me. And, you can look at the YouTube channel and see kind of like what a session would be like, but not really. They're all different.
Right.
Your session is not going to be like any session there. So it just makes you see how people can go into trance and see different things and how real it is for them.
And do you still do your coaching work?
I do very little of it. I still do some coaching. I do that over the phone during the week. But, I like to get into people's souls. I think that's the most fun of it. I did coaching for many, many years, and I loved it, and that, we got a lot of success out of it. But now, why spend so much time on somebody when I can just get right to them and get to the issue right away?
And again, you do sessions in English and in Spanish.
Yes. Yeah. My sessions are either English or Spanish, and in Miami we have a lot of people who speak Spanish, and they're very open to it. And I would say more of my clients are in Spanish now than they are in English. Word does get around, so I do either one. And I've been doing group regressions and it's just a nice thing to do. I really love doing this.
I really love doing this work too, Alba.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to spend part of your Friday evening with us. What are you doing for Halloween tomorrow?
I'm having a session. Yeah, I didn't.
I bet it'll
I
be a
didn't
good
have
one.
scheduled. Yeah, I can't wait. I think it's going to be great. And I don't know the client yet, but I just have a feeling it's going to be I always say that with every client. I think it's going to be a really great session. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to it. So that's how my Halloween will be. I will be doing what I do with the sessions. I'll be time traveling with them.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me and the rest of our listeners tonight. And would you come back again and talk to us when you have some more sessions under your belt?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. It's been so much fun.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been a lot of fun. So I'd like to remind those of you, again, looking for a practitioner of Dolores' method, that you can find them at DoloresCannonQHHT.com. That's DoloresCannonQHHT.com. And you can find out more about my own practice of QHHT at NewEarthJourney.com. I practice right smack dab in the middle of the country here in Kansas. And I'd like to ask you all to join us again next Friday. Well, we'll have another amazing show lined up for you. So good night, all, and happy Halloween. Good night, Alba.
Happy Halloween. Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.